I'm really enjoying Trump 2.0 because he's taking no prisoners. I guess he realized during his first term when he tried to play nice, they still just impeached him twice, put 34 felonies on him, raided his house with the FBI, uh, convicted him, fingerprinted him, mug shotted him, tried to bankrupt him. And again, that was him trying to play nice. Oh, and you can't forget the bullet that hit him in the ear and the other assassination attempts. And so as a result, Trump has decided to not hold anything back. And I have to say, before Trump, the Republican Party has never had any balls. As much as Democrats and libtards try to make Republicans out to be boogeymen, they really have been sackless, which is why the United States is generally a libtarded nation. But now with Trump, the libtardiness is getting called out in the form of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And is a very insidious agenda which has been pushed in this country even before they coined the term. You can really see a lot of DEI in the education system and the criminal justice system, which has led to dumber people, particularly the kids. And when it comes to the criminal justice system, DEI has led to people based on race pretty much getting away with crimes or not getting the death penalty when they should. Or if they do serve any time, they get a very soft sentence, which is why, Joe Biden, before he left office, pardoned a lot of criminals and pushed through more diverse judges who would let a criminal out because they're black or brown or trans. And so when this DEI nonsense is being addressed and really harped on by Trump, it's sort of forcing the reality of this nonsense into light. And with the recent DC plane crash, it's another opportunity for Trump to bring it to light because there's an undeniable fact that they've been pushing DEI, among other things, in the FAA. I mean, you can see here, if you're looking on your screen, the New York Times, the Washington Times, the Daily Mail, which is a news outlet from the UK. Multiple news outlets have covered these stories talking about pushing, forcing diversity in the FAA. I mean, again, the New York Times had an article featuring two black women on the cover talking about the end of the all male, all white cockpit because those are their two favorite demographics to target, so called white people in general and heterosexual men following white people, their favorite targets. And again, there's been a multitude of stories which Trump briefly went over where they have even included people with disabilities because the other part of diversity outside of gender based, gender identity based, and race based, there's also the fourth aspect of it of disability based because they're pushing this whole ableism nonsense. And so, believe it or not, people probably thought it was an exaggeration because they're not interested in the truth. But believe it or not, they have employed and have sought to employ people with disabilities, that being psychiatric disabilities, intellectual disabilities, even people with vision and hearing impairments, because the inclusion aspect of DEI is about including all. Because, it's not fair that certain people can't have certain occupations. Everyone should be able to have any occupation they want. Now, we know in reality that's not true, but in libtard world, it is true. And again, these liberals are willing to die for DEI. And that's all well and good if it just involved liberals, but unfortunately, we live side by side with them. And so that means if they're willing to die for DEI, they're willing to bring you with them, which is why I titled this video, Liberals Will Die and Let You Die for DEI. And whether people are aware of it or not, if you've had someone that's been hurt or has been killed as a result of a crime, particularly if that criminal is a POC, and you found a hard time to get the justice that you thought was satisfactory, well, that has been a result of DEI. And millions of people have been affected by this. But again, there are some people who aren't so obliviously suicidal as most liberals are. I mean, there are people like Aiden Clark's father who willfully accept the concept of a POC killing their kid. I mean, again, I'll never forget him holding that press conference condemning J.D. Vance, Trump, and racists for talking about his kid being killed by an illegal Haitian versus showing anger towards a Haitian that's illegal being in the country in the first place, and in the second place, that leading to his son's death. And if when you have people like that that are willing to not just sacrifice themselves, but even sacrifice their own children for a POC so they don't get seen as racist, then there's no coexisting, and there can be no tolerance for people like that. And so that's why I'm glad Trump 2.0 continues to hammer home the destructive nature of DEI. Now, we must remember, during Biden's administration, when he chose a person to head the Federal Aviation Administration, he chose a Negro who couldn't even answer a single question about aviation. And of course, as a result, he got confirmed, just like that trans got confirmed to lead the health department. But then you had an FAA deputy administrator who made an advertising video during Biden's run about HBCUs and people from Hispanic institutions and from indigenous institutions, encouraging them to apply so they could be hired. Because there's been thousands of qualified whites and Asians mostly that have been turned away. I mean, there's literally lawsuits about this. And usually, the chief, the heads of these DEI divisions is usually some so-called minority. They love picking black women, but also black men, especially if they're effeminate homosexuals. But then you have, liberal whites and liberal Jews that are DEI chiefs that, again, encourage this diversity, equity, and inclusion recruitment, purposely not hiring qualified people. Now, it's already been reported that the co-pilot or the pilot that was in command was a female on one of these aircrafts, a female that only had 500 hours of flying experience. Again, that's diversity bullshit. But also it was revealed that staffing was inefficient. They had a person working the tower that was doing the job of two people. And so even if it's revealed that DEI wasn't directly involved with this particular situation, we know that DEI is involved with the FAA in general, which ends up putting an extra strain on qualified people that are working in these departments because they typically have to pick up the slack for the incompetent morons that they've employed in the name of diversity. And again, a lot of this incompetence is on purpose because, as we know, there are people who are playing a globalist long game, and they're purposely putting incompetent people through diversity in various positions throughout all industries. So ultimately, people will willfully be dependent 100% on the government and on artificial intelligence and robotics. Because so much carnage and destruction would happen as a result of all of this incompetency on purpose in the name of diversity that people would willfully give up their ability to work for themselves, provide for themselves, and they would be comfortable with just accepting a paycheck from the government, a paycheck just to live, while you know daddy and mama government does everything for them. And again, we're already seeing the beginnings of this with people who are refusing to go back to work because they were allowed to work from home due to COVID. But obviously, that was a scam to get to see how many people first, how many people would react to it in a way that they should, and how many people wouldn't, and then also get people used to this concept of being at home for everything. And unfortunately, there's been a culture created that has allowed people to be, more and more lazy, quite frankly. Lazy in a myriad of ways. Intellectually lazy, not just lazy when it comes to work. And again, that's a lot of what liberal ideology leans on. People being lazy in all things. But yeah, again, ultimately, DEI is responsible for this because it puts a strain on the entire system. Whatever that system is, it puts a strain on it. Again, illegal immigration, modern day slave labor, if you will, in the United States, that liberals and Democrat voters support. Look at the strain that it's put on this society, where a lot of industries are dependent on that labor. And many decades ago, they took shop out of class so that the beginnings of getting people into things like construction and working with your hands was purposely removed from the school system decades ago. So again, you have to remember when these people are instituting things, they are playing the long game. I mean, there's agendas that was literally being pushed in the late 1800s that finally came to pass, by the mid late 20th century. And DEI is one of those things. It has different names. Currently, is DEI, but this is why this bullshit needs to be constantly exposed and rooted out. And again, thanks to Trump, it'll at least probably be rooted out for a time because unfortunately so-called conservatives, Republicans, and even people who call themselves Trump supporters, they tend to get very lackadaisical when it comes to fighting this culture war that we are in. You know, but anyway, man, this DEI bullshit has been infecting America for some time now. And where I've, again, most notably noticed it has been in the education system and the criminal justice system. By essentially, enabling idiots to be passed through because they don't want to be seen as racist and allow criminals to get off with crimes essentially because, again, racism concerns, which is utterly retarded, and why I encourage people to stop caring about racism, especially when the people that mainly complain about being victims of it are the biggest racists in the world.